Fearful avoidants are notorious for self-sabotaging relationships. And this self-sabotage comes from a place of deep distrust. It goes back to the childhood of the fearful avoidant. Just like a dismissive avoidant, they experienced childhood emotional neglect. Their parents or their caretakers did not give them the love and the nurturing in the way that they needed. However, in addition to that neglect, they often experienced a chaotic environment growing up, volatility, and sometimes even physical or emotional abuse. The end result is a person that not only has dismissive avoidant attachment, they also have anxious preoccupied as well. It's called disorganized attachment. They have both attachment styles. Now, they also have a deep distrust. Their parents or their caretakers, whoever raised them, did not give them the emotional support, the nurturing, the love in the way that they needed. Actually, they broke their trust. So, as an adult, this deep distrust carries forward. The fearful avoidant fears that anybody that they let in behind that castle wall that they put up around their heart is going to betray their trust, is going to cheat on them, lie to them, betray them in some way, shape, or form. So they become hyper vigilant. After the honeymoon phase is over, the fearful avoidant, well, now their fears are starting to come to the light. And they are looking for evidence in their partner that this fear is valid, looking for inconsistencies. When they find inconsistencies, even if they're small or manufactured, it validates the subconscious mind of the fearful avoidant. The human mind loves to be validated. Even if it's something that you don't consciously want to be right about, the subconscious mind wants to be proven right. The fearful avoidant has these preconceived notions that they're going to be betrayed, so they look for evidence to prove themselves correct. So now, after the honeymoon phase is over, they are on high alert looking for this evidence. And when they find this evidence, they hold it in. They bottle it up, and they don't communicate it directly to their partner. If their partner is doing something that they don't like, or if there's a want or a need of theirs that's not being met, the fearful avoidant is very unlikely to directly communicate this to the partner. They might indirectly or hint at it at best, but often there's no communication whatsoever at all. This is because rejection is also one of their core fears. If they express their emotions as a kid, especially negative emotions, well, they were outright rejected, often reprimanded. They learn to associate it with conflict, and they fear conflict, so they don't express themselves. But these bottled up issues build and mount and mount and mount during this hypervigilant stage. It leads to resentment, and eventually the resentment reaches a breaking point, and that's when they can abruptly end a relationship, or they can slow fade out. But it causes the destruction of a relationship that was good and loving. And the person that's on the receiving end, the person that's being dumped, discarded, slow faded out on, is absolutely blindsided, likely blaming themselves, not knowing what they did wrong, because there was never any communication about dissatisfaction in the relationship. It doesn't feel abrupt to the fearful avoidant, because this has been building up inside of them for all this time, but it feels abrupt to the person that's being thrown out. And it's a very, very painful experience to be on the receiving end of. When the partner asks why the relationship is ending, one of two things is going to happen. The fearful avoidant might give vague excuses that they just aren't ready for a relationship, they just need time and space, they need to figure themselves out, they need to work on themselves, I can't give you what you need, and other typical dismissive avoidant excuses. Or they might actually point to the one thing that's been building up resentment, but they never gave the other person the opportunity to address it or do anything about it. And either way, it's due to a breakdown in communication, a lack of communication from the fearful avoidant. It's a form of self-sabotage. They fear betrayal so much, and they fear that any healthy, loving relationship is essentially doomed because that's what they were shown in childhood, that they take action essentially to ensure that the relationship fails. they cause the destruction of the relationship due to their own fears and their own preconceived notions. The problem is they are often unaware of this. They are often completely unaware of the fact that they are the ones self-sabotaging relationships. This is because of their dismissive avoidance side. Dismissive avoidance, avoid. Fearful avoidance, avoid as well, especially when they are triggered. This means avoiding accountability, avoiding self-reflection. Because when they're triggered in their avoidance side, they suppress emotions, not process them. They run from problems, not deal with them. And they especially avoid accountability. Deep down inside of the fearful avoidant, there's a low self-esteem, a lack of self-worth. They weren't given the love as a child, so they feel unlovable at their core. They feel defective. There's also a core defectiveness wound, just like a dismissive avoidant. If they self-reflect and take accountability for the self-sabotage and destruction of relationships, it would be too painful because that would be confirming their own inner defectiveness. See, I am defective. Look, I hurt this person. Too painful. Can't go there. So they look for external things to blame their fears on, and that's why they become hypervigilant so they can pin it on their partner. See, it's their fault. They were inconsistent here. They did this wrong. I'm justified in abruptly ending the relationship. And until the fearful avoidant takes accountability, until they actually do the work, which should include therapy, a commitment to a change in behavior, and healing those wounds, when they do that, they can become securely attached. They can become good partners and sustain healthy, loving relationships. But until that point, they are very likely to self-sabotage any good relationship that they're in, but they often commit and stay with more toxic partners, narcissists, people of the sort. And that's because toxic partners tend to trigger their anxious side. And when the fearful avoidant is in their anxious mode, they are more likely to cling on, not hold boundaries, and stay in an unhealthy relationship so much longer. Now, when they're with a secure partner or an anxious partner, those are the relationships that they are far more likely to quickly self-destruct. It's not a fun thing to be on the receiving end of, but don't personalize their traumas. You didn't cause this. You were not in their childhood. You did not cause all these issues and wounds. So don't blame yourself. Try to understand and have empathy for where they're coming from. But that doesn't mean you have to accept that behavior. And it doesn't mean the behavior is not hurtful, because they are still full-grown adults and they still are responsible for their own actions. But it is important to not blame yourself for somebody else's unhealthy behavior. Because if you're blaming yourself, you're only hurting yourself and pushing yourself further into insecurity. Be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. And don't blame yourself for somebody else.